They're like, what gas are you huffing? It's called vindication. Vindication! And I think the conspiracy classics too. You go through a phase where you read the conspiracy classics, right? You read Fritz Springmeier. I read all his books. I got them all down here, by the way. And you read other conspiracy books that are of the same vein. And I didn't really think a whole lot about the satanic panic ritual abuse stuff until I became Roman Catholic in 2003. And then I started reading a bunch of books about SRA in the Roman Catholic Church. And not from fundamentalist Protestants, but from people from within the Roman Catholic Church, especially trad Catholics. So it was actually trad Catholics that really started turning my attention to this, because I started reading their books, like Lucifer's Lodge guy, William whatever his name is. I got the book over there. And then Hoffman talked about ritual abuse in his books. And what else? Then I read disinformation operative Malachi Martin, who, even though he's a disinformation operative, he is describing in a lot of ways the stuff that really goes on in the Roman Catholic Church. And he goes into the satanic ritual abuse stuff too. And then over time, you just start realizing, oh, actually, there's quite a few books that have been written on this. And I remember reading the Franklin cover-up stuff and watching all those documentaries. Remember, has nobody seen the conspiracy classic, right? Conspiracy of Silence, the covered up Discovery Channel documentary? That was circulating around the internet for years, back when Google Video was on. Remember that? What did I read next? And then you hear about Skull and Bones. It was 2003. I remember watching the first AJ clip. I'd come across him actually on a traditional Catholic website, and they had a clip of AJ talking about Skull and Bones. I was like, well, Skull and Bones. And that was the first, 2003. That was when I first heard about Professor Anthony Sutton's book on Skull and Bones. So I got that and I read it. And back at that time in my 20s, I would read any book. Like every book that I found, I'd read it. I'm a lot more selective now because I don't want to waste time. Time becomes more precious as you get older. And then you hear about the Illuminati and I want to research this. And I was in a unique position too, because I was studying cults and secret societies as part of my undergraduate papers I was writing for a French Revolution class. So I wrote a couple papers on the usage of secret societies and cults during the French Revolution. And then that introduced me to a lot of the academic literature on the Illuminati, that exists, by the way. I don't know if people don't know that this exists, but that was a real historical secret society. That term is used by a bunch of different groups now. So it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has a direct lineage to the Jacobins, but so you start to realize more and more, okay, so there's a lot of truth to this. But one thing that happens too on the journey down the rabbit hole is that you quickly find out that this Pilgrim's Progress journey down the rabbit hole is populated by all kinds of the slough of disinformation, right? The the mountains of BS, right? To use the Bunyan allegory. So you start to realize, there's a lot of crap out there, right? But I think when you first get into this material, you're a lot more open-minded, and you're that way because you think, oh, I've been lied to. So now anything in the alternative information community, it must be true. And literally a huge portion of it is just garbage and total BS, right? Grifters, spooks, kooks, and crooks, right? Spooks, kooks, crooks. That's a large portion of alternative media. And you learn all this the hard way too, right? You learn all this by going into stupid stuff. Now, I never believed in aliens, but I had a phase where I read a crap ton of alien ET UFO books. Again, I was never convinced of aliens, but I read a lot of the alien stuff. Like I've got J. Allen Hynek's report and all that stupid stuff, and I've got just a bunch of the classics of alien books, and it's just all just gibberish. It's all bull crap for the most part. lifted from science fiction stories. It's so obvious too. Like all these people are a bunch of frauds, a bunch of con men. And then when you realize, hey, wait a minute, maybe there's a usage for lies and deception. Ah, there we go. Disinformation, espionage. So then I go to study that in grad and undergrad, mainly in grad, but in undergrad too. So the whole process is learning to be better at analysis, learning to be better at identifying and sifting out the wheat from the chaff, the bull crap from what's true. And then eventually you kind of get to this point where it's like people are not going to get it, right? I mean, maybe to a degree, people are going to get this. But this idea of like the informed citizen, I mean, come on, dude. Yeah, right. So we've reached this unfortunate apogee where everyone is so dumbed down and so degraded and so medicated and so mind bombed, entertainment bombed, toxified, that the people people are just kind of gone, dude. It's like we're already in zombie apocalypse. So you have to kind of grow out of that idea that you're going to wake everybody up. You're not, and that's just part of fallen human nature. I mean, there's always the potential to wake more people up, and there's always the potential for anybody, right, to wake up, to repent, whatever. But things can get really bad and degraded to where, you know, you kind of reach like a tipping point. But you don't need everybody anyway, right? You only need a certain amount of the population. But that was also at a time period when we weren't living under the most sophisticated psyops and mind control ever. So I don't know. I don't know where we're going. But remember, for many, many years, so-called CTs, truth theorists, conspiracy, espionage analysts, let's use the real espionage analysts, would talk about this kind of stuff, about Hollywood's fascination with the blood of the youth. And it was just gibberish, nonsense, lies. You're crazy. This doesn't exist. Well, I mean, it was always in like mainstream, mainline stuff where it would pop up. And then people said, no, it doesn't exist. But right, the Kardashians made a big deal about this back in 2018. When Kim was talking about how she enjoyed getting blood facials because it's blood from young people, you see. But that doesn't exist. That didn't exist. But who talked about that first? Well, it was people in the CT crowd that talked about that for years. Now, keep in mind too, this is something that really trips people up. People can get part of the picture right and be wrong about other stuff, right? So, like, I remember thinking a long time ago in a very simplistic way about conspiracy stuff. And you would hear stuff about this kind of stuff, the blood stuff, and you would think, oh, it's the Illuminati blood rituals, and it's a very simplistic, and then that people would not listen to you because, oh, but you also believe in this stupid thing. All I'm trying to say is that it's usually a situation where the truth is somewhere in the middle. I'm not talking about like faking grace, centrism. I'm saying that any of the old, say 90s conspiracy researchers, right? Like say Fritz Springmeier, there was areas in his books where he would go off into speculation and get things wrong, and it ended up kind of in ways discrediting his source material, right? Like he would rely on that obvious con man, John Todd, right? But then in other places, Fritz would be citing Quigley consistently, way ahead of his time, right? And it was actually Fritz that I remember first talking about Hollywood loving the blood stuff. But it was more sophisticated than, well, if he got one thing wrong, then he's a shill, he's a liar. It's just more sophisticated than that, right? People at that time didn't have a lot of access to information that people have now. And so people are going to make mistakes. There's going to be, this kind of stuff's going to happen. I remember thinking goofy things at times that now I look back and I'm like, that was so dumb. Why did I believe that? Right. But it was, in a way, good as a learning process to go through that, to get better at your analysis and your prognostications, so to speak. And the more sophisticated you get, the more you realize, okay, so that really this is, it's espionage. It's the tactics and techniques of corporate governance, utilizing sophisticated technologies of deception. That's what's really going on, right? That's the best description of the totality of the so-called conspiracy. And it's mainly the entities that you hear me talking about that are bringing it into fruition. And that's why I think that a lot of the people out there, I'm not saying it's bad to talk about spiritual entities or something like that, but like people saying that it's aliens running it, that's all deception, that's all bullshit. And that's all distraction from getting you to look at the real power structures, like the banking structure, like the World Economic Forum, Davos, right? The foundations, the NGOs, that's the real power structure. And the goblins and the dimensional portals and all that, that's disinformation and bullshit. It's fine to talk about that, to speculate about that. But, I mean, come on, dude. Remember all the people into the Mandela effect? I mean, when I started realizing that like the informed citizen thing just doesn't make any sense, I'd already read a bunch of kind of elitist material in my 20s that would poo-poo that notion, but I was still kind of into the idea of awakening the masses through getting the word out. And then I remember when the Bin Laden event at the burial at sea, remember that? And it was already obvious, even mainstream journalists like Cy Hirsch, right, had questioned that event. It was already obvious that, dude, this is like makes no sense. And remember back at that time, that was before a lot of people, as many people are awake now compared to back then. Back then, it was minuscule, dude. Like, the CT community was small back then. So you would have like conspiracy conventions, right? People would still have these kind of in the open. It doesn't really exist anymore after COOF. But like, there's all kinds of conspiracy conventions back in like 2005, 6, 7. And a lot of it was just stupid shit. Yeah, but there was a lot of good information too at those conferences, way ahead of their time. A lot of those people, by the way, were promoting Bitcoin. Like, I remember Bitcoin being promoted at a lot of those kinds of conventions back in 2012, 13, right? So people laugh at conspiracy theories, but I mean, if you were an investor, like, this stuff is the cutting edge, right? Because yeah, a lot of it's BS and it's packed with a lot of stupid alien costumes and smoke and mirrors bullshit. But if you can cut through all of that, you can actually like be way ahead of things. That's one thing I started realizing, that so the whole conspiracy genre is really just intelligence of its own kind of intelligence, rumor intelligence. And it's a matter of kind of deciphering smoke and mirrors. And if you can get good enough at it, you can figure out what things to, for example, invest in. I'm not saying that it's all about making money, but I'm saying that from the vantage point of like a trader or an investor, right? That's what intelligence use is for them. That's the whole point of Wall Street. Remember Bud Fox and Gordon Gekko? Remember when Bud Fox is in there, he's like, I'm going to be the best investor you've ever had. And Gordon Gekko's like, yeah, well, go get me some intel at the golf club. And he's like, what? He's like, yeah, go get dirt on people at the golf club and figure out what they're doing. Right? So he didn't realize that it's just about getting intelligence ahead of time to make it. How do you think the Congress people who get $150,000 as a salary come out of their billionaires? Duh, right? So that's actually how the world really works. All this conspiracy stuff is just figuring out how the world really works. That's it. Because guess what, guys? If you haven't figured it out,
the world operates on scams and cons. Did you know that?
Now, if you think about the fact that like this world is fallen and it's, you know, in a sense, the devil's for a short time, as the scriptures say, doesn't it kind of make sense that it would function globally on gigantic cons and scams? I mean, isn't the devil kind of the archetypal con man? And by the way, guess what book we're going to be doing? Guess what book we're doing next? Okay, once I do that hideous strength. Hello, by the way, Vindication. The whole world loves C.S. Lewis. Did you read that hideous strength? Because that whole book is about everything you hear me saying. The most famous author of the 20th century, next to Tolkien and freaking hot ass babe Ayn Rand. That's a joke. Is like C.S. Lewis, right? Bible, Ayn Rand, Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, probably. And the whole freaking that hideous strength is all. I mean, I was watching this goofy evangelical dude, seminary professor, lecturing on that hideous strength and talking about how he doesn't like that book and it's the one that makes the least amount of sense to him. Dude, you're supposed to be an evangelical lecturer and you can't recognize that book is about the freaking global conspiracy that we are living in right now?